Welcome to Ep.2 of AB on AI. We're coming in a couple days late. I'm going to be honest, I needed to take a break. I was a little tired. I've been waking up at, 4:35 a.m. all week, and I'm starting this new kind of schedule where I wake up early and I do 5 to 6 hour sprints on a lot of the projects and businesses that I'm working on. And really, honestly, it just caught up to me. So I'm coming in a little late today, but still wanted to record something this week for you guys to listen to and stay updated on while you're wrapping up your Sunday and getting ready for the new week ahead. Let's get into it. Now, this week, I intentionally did not put in my last newsletter any real updates about OpenAI. There weren't a ton of updates when I published. And I thought, oh, wow, that's interesting. We have a whole full week of updates in AI and no real mention of OpenAI, which, as you guys know, is completely abnormal since, I would say maybe the past 12 to 14 months. And so I was super surprised at not having any major updates. This is why I'm really glad that I published my newsletter at the beginning of the week, and then I record the podcast at the end of the week or over the weekend, mainly because it really gives me several days to add new stories to the podcast that are not actually featured in the newsletter. And that's exactly what happened with OpenAI, which we're going to get to later in this episode. But first up, we're going to talk about Google and search and how Google is still the king of search. Now, this is super interesting because some of you may remember when AI really started to get a chokehold on us, a lot of the talking heads in tech were saying how this was going to completely disrupt search, which I'm a part of that crew. I completely agree with that, but the data doesn't lie. And so one data point that I felt was super interesting, particularly around integrating ChatGPT and folks thinking that this was going to completely transform search and give Microsoft a lead over Google. Not so. Wah, wah. Sorry. Sorry, Google. Sorry, Microsoft. That's not the case, at least not yet. And so there was a study that actually said a whopping 60% of people that were interviewed thought that Bing was not going to break 5% market share. And that's true. They haven't even jumped 1%, so less than 1%. And really, my take on this is search is a long game. For those of you who don't remember, especially I would say in the 90s, and then also I would say in the early 2000s, this was probably before Google Chrome was a staple in terms of search. The browser wars are very much a long game. And so even when Google came out and launched Google Chrome, it took a decade. And that's Google. They have a lot of money to apply to different problems and different products and solutions that they launch. And even with all the money that they have, it took 10 years for them to dominate with the browser. And so I don't think it's going to be much different. Long story short, I really don't think it's going to be much different with search. Search is the interface of the World Wide Web. When the internet first came out, the only way for us to access it, and this was pre-algorithmic search results, was to use a search engine to actually find the information that we need. The big thing that I think is happening right now is these AI chatbots are going to become the new interface of search. And so instead of us going to a browser, we're going to be using our favorite chatbot to find the answers to what we're looking for. Now, that's, again, the long game. Is this going to happen next year? No. Is this going to happen? I'm not even going to say the next 3 years. Even though AI is moving fast, there's a lot of people on this planet where they have to now shift their behavior from going to Google to search to going to a chatbot to search. Long story short, I basically think we're still super early in the game with this. Regardless of the way that you search, AI will become the interface of search, but not yet. All right, moving on to the next story. I thought this story was really interesting, mainly because of all the conversation around, and it's actually not conversation, all the facts around AI scraping user data, but particularly creative, so authors, and training their AI on that huge problem. You guys know we've talked about this before in the newsletter, so there's nothing new there. But what is new is this Japanese author. She actually won one of the top prizes for a book that she wrote. The book is called The Tokyo Tower of Sympathy. And what was interesting about this is she used ChatGPT to write her book. Not all of it, though. She used it for about 5% of the book. It focused on an area where she was actually talking about architecture. And so she used ChatGPT to write a portion of the book. But what I really find interesting about this story is not that she used ChatGPT to write a book, because we all know that people are doing that now. It's not something that's coming. It's something that is already happening. But what's most interesting to me about this is that she was transparent about that. She wore it as a badge of honor versus something to hide, something to be shameful about. And so I think that speaks to a larger trend that's happening around creativity and producing creative works assisted by AI, and that there is a place for that, and that it's not something that we necessarily need to be shameful about. I think a lot of people, especially in the news, and because AI does take a lot of people's data and their creative works to train the AI, if you say that you are writing a creative work with AI, or maybe it's not even writing, maybe it's producing some type of AI art, any type of AI art, visual, audio, or even written like a book, I think it's interesting for creatives and for creators to say, yeah, I used this AI to produce a portion of the work. And so I think it's a new kind of era we're moving into, where we can blend this idea of being a creative and creating something original and unique with the assistance of AI. So for all you writers, producers, just creatives in general, I don't know, this is something to think about. I know I'm thinking about it as well. And for many of you that don't know, I use AI extensively in my work. I actually have a GPT that I use to help me write tweets in the theme and the tone of tech bros on Twitter. I love the idea of using AI to synthesize and parse through original thoughts that you may have and present them in clear and concise ways that are on trend with how people consume media. Many of you guys may or may not know, I'm working on so many different things. I have an accelerator, I have a fund, I'm relaunching an AI company that I started in 2018. I'm advising startups. So I have a lot of plates in the air. And for me, that's really why I use AI a lot. It really helps me get a lot of stuff done very quickly, and to be honest, at a really high quality. So that's why I use AI, and that's why I'm bullish on using AI as a creative to help assist in creative works. I'm trying something new with this podcast. I would love to know your thoughts. A part of what I really love about my community and putting out newsletters and putting out podcasts is the direct connection that I have with you guys. Honestly, this podcast. I would have never thought to even do a podcast if I hadn't gotten so many emails from you guys. Anyway, I'm starting something new. This won't be every episode. I'll still have folks join me on each episode, like Yari and some other friends of mine, so that we can talk about the latest in AI. But sometimes I think it's good for us to have a dialogue, just you and I. And so I would love to know, what do you guys think about AI assisted creative works? Is this something that you would do? Is this something that you're already doing? Reply back to my newsletter on this and we'll get the conversation going. All right. Okay, next story. This story was actually my lead story in the newsletter. I felt like it was super important because of its innovation. If you guys had read my 2024 predictions, you guys know that I talked about how I felt like AI would disrupt blue collar jobs, particularly in factories. And while this next story is really about that, BMW hires robots as a service to actually help them manufacture cars. So they actually partner with this company called Figure AI, where they build autonomous robots for manufacturers. And what's interesting about Figure AI and also this larger development around autonomous robots is like, how do we train them, right? And so one of the things that I had mentioned in my predictions for 2024 was I felt like blue collar workers who were used to doing the physical labor would be replaced with AI robots. And then they would become elevated as managers of these robots. And then, of course, would need to upskill themselves with prompt engineering and different things like that so that they could actually manage the robot and refine them. Now, this latest development between BMW and Figure AI is representative of a study, which I also linked to, around some progress that's being made in artificial intelligence with autonomous robots and how they are trained. What's super fascinating is it's not them being trained through prompt engineering. They are training by learning by doing. And so the robots are actually able to watch someone do a task and then replicate it. And so this is, well, I was going to say this is light years away from what I was thinking, but this is the future, actually. And so that to me is transformational. And then additionally, it like really reduces the amount of technical knowledge and technical skill that will be needed for blue collar workers who will then elevate to management positions and begin to manage robots. Say, for instance, a super interesting use case might be a robot is picking something and packing it in a facility, and maybe they packed it wrong. Well, the manager would basically simply show them how to do it and pack it correctly, and then the robot would update its system and do it correctly. And so what is amazing about this is it's not really different than having a regular employee. For all of you guys who are managers or who have managed people before, that it's very rare when you hire somebody that they get it right 100% of the time. There's always training and tweaking that needs to happen. And what's interesting, that it looks like it's not going to be much different with robot. Anyway, super fascinating story. I go into detail about this. If you're just listening to the podcast and you're not a subscriber yet of my newsletter, AB on AI, it's completely free. It comes out weekly. Get more information on this story and why it's important. I go into exactly what they're doing, which facility of BMW's this is rolling out to. It's actually one of their US facilities, and then also some data on this technology that I'm talking about that allows robots to learn by doing versus prompt engineering. Let me know what you think. Is this something that you would do? And bigger question, what do you feel like this means for the future of work? I know what I think, but I would love to know what you think, and then maybe we'll have another conversation about that later. All right. Okay. So here we are. Final story. Whew. I spent all day yesterday playing around with this feature in ChatGPT. I actually didn't know. It seems like they rolled it out somewhat quietly. I didn't see a lot of fanfare on Twitter from the tech bros about this yesterday. I went to Panera because I needed to get some work done. And so I opened up ChatGPT. I was ready to start working and got this little dialog box that prompted me and notified me that I can reference any of my GPTs that I've been using. So, not just mine, any GPT in their app store just by using ads. This is super similar to just mentioning somebody on Twitter or social media. ChatGPT, OpenAI rolls out GPT mentions, which is huge in terms of workflow. So how I was using it yesterday, well, I guess before I tell you how I was using it yesterday, let me tell you how I used to use it. So you guys know I have maybe about, I have 11 or 14 GPTs that I published that I had been using with founders in my accelerator. And when they announced the GPT store, I really wanted like my own personal GPT dashboard where people could get to my GPTs. Of course, you can search my name and get to it. But again, a lot of what's happening with AI is completely disruptive because we don't have the same interfaces that we would have. So while they have an app store, it's hard to navigate, I guess, a little bit. So anyway, long story short, I build this kind of GPT dashboard. It's on my website. If you guys are interested, you can also find it. I believe I linked to it in my link in my bio on Instagram as well. If not, I actually have a reel that I posted. If you comment in the reel and just say ChatGPT, actually it's not ChatGPT. If you comment in the reel and say GPT, then it will send you a link to all of the GPTs, and I'm using mini chat for that. For those of you who have seen this functionality online and aren't quite sure how people are doing, they're using a product called mini chat. All right. Anyway, how I had been using my GPTs and other GPTs is I would basically launch them. And so I would have all of these different threads that I'm copying and pasting content and text and data between all of these different GPTs. So what I find fascinating about this is the product managers at OpenAI, they're not asleep at the wheel, to say the least. They're really understanding how people are using ChatGPT, and more specifically, since they rolled out the GPT store about a week or so ago, they're paying attention to how people are using the GPT. This new feature allows you to simply do the @ symbol in a thread and reference the GPT that you want to use. So this was transformative for me in terms of workflow, because instead of me opening up like 10 different GPTs and having all of these multiple tabs going on and copying and pasting between all of these different threads, I now can start one thread based on the topic. Okay, so yesterday I was working on something for my AI accelerator just because I had launched it like MVP style. I didn't put a ton of work into the structure and like the business foundation because I had built and sold an accelerator before that. I already knew what I wanted to do, and I put it out to my community and people were super receptive. We got a ton of applications like within 24 hours. And I had been working on the accelerator since then, but a part of what I had to do is double back and put some of the foundational elements of that part of my business into place. And so what I was able to do was create a thread called, AI Accelerator Foundation. And I went through my own process that I actually take all of my founders through. So a part of my personal process is like when I have an idea, I am applying my own methodology that I use with founders in my accelerator to my own ideas as well. And so a part of this is me productizing my knowledge and building GPTs. I'm basically saying I put myself through a mini accelerator to build the foundation of this AI accelerator part of my business. And so instead of, again, doing this across multiple different tabs and GPTs, I was able to create one thread and reference multiple GPTs within the same thread. So I was able to reference my transformation statement GPT. And then once that was done and perfected, I simply did at persona craft, which is my persona GPT. And it looked at everything that I had developed previously in the conversation thread, and then it built my personas. And I was like, oh shit, this is great. So the next thing that I did after that was build out the market. So I referenced my market maven GPT. And so you can see I literally went through the whole process of building a foundation of a business using this process. So it just really makes it a little bit more effortless. AI is a bit effortless in and of itself, but this kind of ratchets it up a bit. Like it makes it really easy and organized. And particularly if you are someone who likes to chunk out their work, which again, this is something that I had been trying out and testing out for about 2 weeks, waking up at 5 a.m. and focusing on different aspects of my business. And so this to me works beautifully. Again, it was a super quiet rollout. And you guys may have noticed this already if you are a subscriber to ChatGPT Plus. I believe that it's for subscribers. But yeah, also if you don't see it, make sure you've opted into the beta of OpenAI developments. And so I usually do this with all platforms that I use just because I'm a nerd. I like to play around with different features super early. So that's what I do. But this could be something that is super useful for you and for your work as well. So let me know what you guys think. I'm thinking about I may actually do a video just going through my whole process of how I actually build. It's not a business plan because business plans are super cumbersome, but I call it a business foundations document. And I used to do this in like a one sheet format. If you're somebody who has like a ton of ideas, it's a really interesting process to just go through and document your ideas and put them away, watch the market, and then decide if you want to move forward with developing it. What I like about using my GPTs and other GPTs that people have built like it is you can basically build a framework for any idea on how you would move forward. And so to me, I reference this on my social media, it's really cool because it's almost like having an AI co-founder and someone to help you out with Streamlytics. I used to have someone on my team who actually helped me do investor relations, and I would communicate with him on a regular basis and give him updates on just different things that were happening with the business and how that actually applies to our investor updates. And he would write our investor updates and I would edit them and then we would send them out. Well, you don't really need anyone like that anymore. And this applies to a lot of areas, unfortunately, in business. There's a lot of roles that you would have paid six figures for, but using these very specific GPTs for various areas of your business and stringing them together, you end up kind of building an AI agent or an AI employee or an AI coworker, an AI founder, whatever you want to call it. You end up building a team that can actually help you execute and move faster and much lower overhead as well. All right, guys, I think that's it. That is all for this episode 2 of AB on AI. I really enjoyed this. I'm very much looking forward to hearing what you guys think. Like, what do you guys think about Google still being the search king? And how long do you think it's going to take before AI is the main interface for search versus the search engine? Another thing, don't forget, I also want to know, what are your thoughts about partnering with AI for creative works, like the Japanese author, well, now award-winning Japanese author. And then finally, this whole idea of robots as a service, the partnership between BMW and Figure AI, that's fascinating. They're innovating an entirely new model called robots as a service, where just like software as a service, you pay monthly and get access to robots. So I want to know your thoughts on that. Super innovative, especially if you happen to work in a blue collar field or someone in your family does. What do you think? How do you think this is going to disrupt that world, and how long do you think it's going to take to do that? All right, guys, this has been amazing. I am looking forward to having these conversations with you, and I will see you on the flip side.